What's up everybody, today I want to do a full-on setup guide of the Weebill 2 for the setup that I usually use with this in the configuration with the Canon EOS R, and I currently have the 15-35mm mounted on there, so that's a bit of a heavy setup. But I want to go through the setup from the base package all the way to the Pro package with the motor on either the focus or the zoom, and of course also the wireless transmission system, TransMount. First up, I am going to set this up the way that I usually set this up with my Canon EOS R. If you have a different camera, you might need different cables, but as you might have seen in my unboxing video, and you can see that in the description linked below if you haven't seen that, there are tons of cables available in the package with the Zhiyun Weebill 2 Pro or any of the other packages, so that you can find the right one to connect to your camera, either with the HDMI with the TransMount system or via USB-C if you just want to have the camera controls. Another thing is that this is not sponsored or brought to you by Zhiyun. All of this is purchased with my own money for projects that are coming up, and of course just to be helpful to you. With that said, if you find this video helpful, I would appreciate a thumbs up or a super thanks. That's always really appreciated so that I can make more content like this available for you here on YouTube. Now with that said, let's jump into the setup of the Weebill 2 base package. And essentially all you have is the gimbal. Then you also have the little tripod, and of course the first thing that you can do to make your life a lot easier is to simply screw that into the bottom of the gimbal and open it up so that you have a chance to set this down onto a desk or something similar so that you can start working with this. The cool thing here is that now we can actually also unlock these two locks right there and lock them again with the opened up position. Now this here, as you can see, is basically the way that you would have your camera mounted anyways, and this makes it very easy for you to actually work on the gimbal while you're setting things up, putting the camera into the mount and all of those things. Now we have a couple of adjustments. So we have this right here, which can change how far you want to push the camera left or right from looking from behind the gimbal. Then we have this one here where we can slide back and forth, and other mechanisms to balance the camera. In this video specifically, however, I am not going to be focusing on the balancing of the camera. That's going to be in a future video. If you want to see that, please leave a comment down below so that I know that you want to see this, how to gimbal balance the Zhiyun Weebill 2. Now the next step, of course, is the mounting bracket so that we can get the camera on top of here. This is a Manfrotto type mounting bracket, and of course you can basically screw in the camera right on top of here, and then we slide this in here and it clicks into place, so you cannot push this back and forth unless you also push this button right there to remove the base plate again. Now I find this really useful, however, there is one thing that I really miss on here, and that's a Arca-Swiss compatible mount. Now, what you do get is a couple of these screws, which are basically normal tripod screws. And of course, one of these goes through right here into this Manfrotto type plate. And I like to push it right through, so we can actually mount stuff to this plate. Now you also get this kind of Arca-Swiss semi-compatible plate right here from Zhiyun in the package, which has two screw holes down here at the bottom. And with that, you can take this plate here and screw this into place with two screws, as I've mentioned. And that would give you the ability to basically fix this to that. I am, however, not really sure why this would be helpful, because after all, if you want to remove this of some kind of way, or need to remove this in some kind of way, you would still have to unscrew two screws and then also take the plate off your camera. Now, I don't really like that. On my cameras, I always use these PeakDesign Arca-Swiss compatible plates right there, and those basically stay there for the time I have the cameras, and I don't take them off. So what I did instead, specifically for the use with this gimbal, and also already do here in my teleprompter that I have in front of me, I use these types of plates. These are Arca-Swiss compatible, and the cool thing is that you have a quick release right here, so you have a bit of a safety lever, so you pull that and then you can open this up and then you close it without needing to do anything else. And here you have a screw with which you can basically adjust how tight the fit should be or how tight you need it for your specific base plate. I like to put these on top of things so that I don't have to basically mess around with unscrewing something while on set. So with that said, let's just put this into position, screw this in place right there so that we can get started without having to unscrew or screw anything from the camera. Now I like to put this basically right at the back there, and then we can use the hex head screwdriver which comes with the Zhiyun tech, and we can screw this into place, into position right there. And of course, depending on your balancing, you might have to adjust this somehow. But usually for me, I have this right here in the back position, basically closing off with the back of the Manfrotto plate as well. Now with that, we can already push this back into position. We can tighten this for the moment, and then I can take the camera already and put this right on top of here, open this up, and with that, close this off, maybe adjust the camera again, close this off. I need to retighten the screw because I just opened that while demonstrating a little bit. So now we have all that screwed into place, and it looks like this here from the side. We can open this lock and move this all the way around. And of course, now it is time for a bit of a balancing so that we can, of course, start working on this. Now we need to adjust the back and forth for the moment. So we have it like that. That's fine for now. Then we have this motor. And of course, that needs a little bit adjustment. That's fine. And for now, I'm doing this very, very basically because I just want to not have this swivel around all too much. And this, of course, would not already be how I would leave this because it is still too much wiggle room, but it is just staying really nice and centered when it is just there, basically. And what you can see right now here is basically the package that you get when you purchase the base package of the Zhiyun Weebill 2. And you can see we basically have the camera set up. It is already stabilized on here, and we can start working with this. Now, of course, for starting to work with this, you want to properly balance it. You want to adjust the motor strength and those kind of things, but that's not the focus of this video. It's a setup guide. Now, one thing that I do want to mention here is if you have just the base package as it is set up right now, you of course also can unscrew the bottom part here, the tripod, and then bring this into position right here at the back. Screw this into place, and then you have this little lever right here, and you can pop this open and then either tighten this further or open it a little bit until it clicks, and this way this back handle, this tripod here, does not screw off easily without also you pulling this lever and removing that little safety pin, which means that now if you do the underslung mode, this tripod here will not automatically unscrew by itself when you use this mode. Now this is great because it is a really minimal setup and you don't need anything else to start working with this. It is, for my purposes or my own taste, not ideal, and the combo package is much better in this regard because then you actually get the back handle as well as a back, which I don't think is really necessary. I personally would much prefer if Zhiyun would offer a package with the back handle and the tripod feet, and that would be the base package that I think almost everybody wants. The back, on the other hand, it's unnecessary fluff that nobody really needs, especially if you want to do travel or stuff like that. You don't need that back because you want to pack this into your backpack with other gear without having to carry another heavy back as well. So in my opinion, the best upgrade you can do is actually the back handle, but right now you're basically stuck with also buying the back unless you find the back handle separately to purchase as well. Now, for the back handle, you can of course also just use just about any other thing. However, you have to keep in mind that there's the monitor which you want to be able to twist out, and that cannot interfere here with your back handle. And if you don't get the right one, that might be an issue for you. However, if you do decide to go for the combo package right from the start or get the original back handle, then let's deactivate the motors. I'm gonna lock this one and that one, and then we are left with this here. Then of course you have this little screw right here because the back handle actually has a quick release mechanism. So first things first, we are going to tighten this to the back right there where we just basically put the tripod in. And now we can basically just screw this in nice and tight. Something I find really interesting is that in this case, the lever right here on the side actually becomes more or less useless. So you don't need this anymore because this is really nice and fixed right there. You cannot just untwist this because it is having some teeth on the top and the bottom. So it is preventing it from just twisting off. And the back handle here has its own mechanisms to safety. So you just simply slide this on there and it just clicks into place right there and it does not move anymore. And the best way to then fix it as well is that you have a lever right there which you can push in, and now there's no movement whatsoever, and you simply just have a really nice and sturdy back handle right here, and you can just continue using your gimbal. And of course also go into underslung mode. And with that, you can still hold it in the back here. You have an extended handle that way, and you have the handle at the top right there on top of things. Now, this is actually helpful in many ways because additionally, you also have a bit of a point right there where you can actually fix other things. Now to do that, let's undo the lever on this side, and now it clickers again. However, we still have this safety pin, so we press that in and then we can remove this from there. And now we have these points right here, or this here, and I really like to use this to actually fix a couple of PeakDesign anchors, and with those I then can use my PeakDesign Sling as another point of contact for the weight to be distributed. So now I can just pull these through here, have one fixed already, and now let's do the other one the other way around and pull that over. And now I have these nicely fixed right there. I can push this back into place on the gimbal, fix the lever on the other side so it is nice and tight. And now I can just use my strap, which is the PeakDesign strap, and I'm not sure if this is still the model that they sell. It might be a revised version on the market at this point, but you basically just clip this in on both sides. And with that clipped in, you now have another point of contact with your gimbal so that you actually don't just have everything in your weight. Now, I already also like to just use this over one's shoulder like this. And again, this helps to have another point of stabilization essentially, and also another point to take the weight off of your arms. Now, I think this is a real benefit of the back handle right here. So you are able to not have to carry all the weight at all times. And of course, also having the tripod on the bottom is really helpful because you can set down your gimbal whenever you're not necessarily needing it in your hands, and you can just set it down to relax yourself a little bit and don't strain your muscles all too much. Another really cool thing here is that you actually have two more mounting positions here at the back. There are normal tripod head screws, and then we have another cold shoe mount here in the back as well, so you can fix something there. And around the gimbal, you also have a couple of these screw mounting positions right there, which I don't know how they're called, but I have seen people, for example, mount monitors on these types of screws. And there's actually also another one right here on the gimbal on the back part right there. So this now would essentially be the combo package because all you get is the back and the back handle right here. Now with the camera mounted on here, and no matter which package you get, you actually can already start controlling the camera via USB-C or micro USB depending on your package. And to do that, you have to connect one end to your camera, and of course it has to be a compatible camera, and then the other end goes into the back port right there, and that's the camera control port. And now you can see we have the camera free to move, all the motors are unlocked. I can open the monitor back up and either turn on the gimbal or reactivate the motors if you have those on standby. Now on the second to last tab in the monitor settings, you can go to the control wheel settings, and here you can choose which kind of settings you would like to control. You can choose roll, aperture, ISO, shutter, electronic focus, and then of course the follow focus or the follow zoom systems. Now, I like to use, for example, the electronic focus if I want to do manual focusing. I can turn on the camera and then I can change this with the wheel back here. Now, to demonstrate this, I'm going to choose the shutter, and I can see that it is working here on the screen, that I am changing the settings of the shutter angle or the shutter speed for what I am having set up here on the monitor. Now you can also do this with the ISO, and now I am at ISO 25,000 and going down all the way to automatic ISO once again. So this is really incredible that compatible cameras can already be controlled from this setup here. And of course you also can hit the record button, and that will trigger the camera to start recording. So you don't actually have to press any buttons on the camera as long as you have it set up with the USB connection, and of course as long as your camera is compatible with the Zhiyun gimbal. And I will probably link to a PDF or a website that will show which cameras are compatible and which kinds of feature sets are compatible with the Zhiyun, so that you know that before you making your purchase. Now with that, let's undo this, because we want to move forward with the other stuff and of course start setting up the wireless system. And for doing that, we actually have to take off the camera, because we will have to adjust a little bit of the gimbal and mount the TransMount mounting solution. And of course we can undo this here. And I just double press the on-off button, which means the gimbal itself is still on. However, the motors are off and in standby, so you don't need all that power. And also you can move them freely, and you don't have to worry about all of those things being in the way or stuff like that. So that's really handy. Now the wireless transmission system is called the TransMount, and this is it. It has two Wi-Fi antennas, because this essentially acts as a Wi-Fi router, and then you can transmit the signal to an iPad or an iPhone so that people actually can control the gimbal or the camera and also see the image that the camera is currently producing or outputting via HDMI. I find this incredibly useful, especially because it also gives you the ability to see the image on the inbuilt monitor of the Zhiyun Weebill 2, which is incredibly helpful in my opinion, because you don't have to worry about whether or not you are in a position where the monitor of your camera is actually visible or at some point blocked by the basic contraption that you have around with the gimbal. You have another, or at least a secondary monitor, which you can also work with, and you just have to bring this right here. Now you also have to charge this, so that's another consideration. However, it also gives you much more features than that, because it also allows you to remotely control the camera if you have the people for it. You can do that with an iPhone or an iPad, but you can also use the Zhiyun monitor solution, which I have seen online and not tested yet, of course. But I think those kind of ways of making video work easier and giving other people of the team more control of what is going on here is really powerful. Now, ideally, the best solution would be if the camera would just talk to the gimbal itself with a USB connection, and that way the image could be transmitted already without needing this device, at least for having the image available here on the inbuilt monitor. But at the moment it is how it is, and I think it's a good enough solution for the moment. Now, to mount this transmitter, we have a bit of a quick release plate, so you don't have to always screw something around here, which makes things even more easy in terms of the setup. Now, one thing I would have wished for is 2 of these TransMount mounting plates, because they also have an alternative with which you can actually mount this to your cold shoe mount or your hot shoe on top of your camera. However, if you do that, then you have to take out the screwdriver to actually disassemble that and then put it back onto the gimbal. And there you actually have just about tiny screw heads for the screws that we are about to fix here. So in my opinion, it would have been great to have 2 of these TransMount mounting plates packaged in here, or at least provide them as an extra product to be able to purchase them individually on the website. Now the TransMount is essentially mounted on the bottom of this right here. So we have it right there at the bottom. And so we'll take a screw, put this on here, and it is important that the white parts right there are pointing toward the monitor. So we'll just put the screw right through and start to tighten this. And now we can take the screwdriver and put that in there. And as I've mentioned, I would have preferred multiple of these mounting plates, because it would make my life easier to be able to either mount this in different places or have it on top of my camera and here, depending on how I want to use it or how I need it in that moment. Mainly because these screw heads here have tiny hex heads, And that means that those are going to be, I don't know, they're not necessarily making an interesting look in terms of longevity when you want to screw them off and on all the time. So that's my main consideration. But my personal use case at the moment would be mostly using this on here on the gimbal without any of the need for the other mounting solution. So this is fixed right there. And now we can take the TransMount and simply push this into place. So pushing it in from this side right there, and just like that, the TransMount is mounted on top of the gimbal like so. And now you can of course position your antennas however you would like. And it's always a bit of a consideration. They don't twist 360 degrees, so be careful that you only twist them in ways that work and not any of the other ways. So mounting this and then positioning the antennas can be a bit of a situation, but it is easy enough, I would say. Now to link everything together with a TransMount, it is important to know that there is a special USB-C cable for some reason that is different to all the others, and it has this yellow tag. And this is the cable that supposedly is only, or the only cable that you can use to connect the TransMount to the gimbal itself. For doing so, we have to go here on the side and link that. This is the side which only has one port. So this only has a USB-C port. And then you can kind of twist your cable around there and then plug it into this port right there, the lower USB-C port right there on the gimbal, which is also marked as either a follow focus motor and or the system for the TransMount. So that's important. And then on the other side of the TransMount module, we have a USB-C port and an HDMI port. And those of course are used to connect to the camera. So now with the one side hooked up, we can put the camera back into its place and rebalance this, or at least roughly balance it a little bit. And just like that, we have it set up again. And the next step is to hook things up. So we have this cable right there, which is a USB-C cable. It's a black tagged one, and we can put one of the cords into the TransMount. I like to then just wrap this around somehow, but it only works sometimes, and sometimes you just have to leave it dangle around. So that goes into the camera. And let's just shut the camera off for a moment. And then I have a HDMI cable. In this case, I have a mini HDMI to mini HDMI. And one of these sides, of course, goes into the TransMount. And then the other side goes into the camera. And just like that, we have all of that hooked up. And as I've mentioned, I like to kind of twist things into places so that they don't dangle as much. In this case, let's wrap one cable around the other so they're at least a little bit organized and cleared up. Now with these things connected, now it is time to turn on the TransMount by pushing the button on here. Then you have a green light and the battery status right there. And now we can go back, open up the monitor, and now I can reactivate the camera or the gimbal. It just beeped, and that means that it is connected to the TransMount. I'm turning on the camera as well. Now I have an image here on the camera. And as I open this screen here, I can go all the way to the start, the first monitor right there, and then go further and scroll down. And there you can see now I have an image right here of what is happening on the screen, and the camera monitor is shown right there on the gimbal monitor as well. Now I think this is a really powerful feature, and as I've mentioned, there are more ways to use this with a smartphone or the solution with the monitor from ScionTech itself. However, I'm not going to cover that in this video specifically, as we have to move on to set this thing up fully with also including the follow focus or follow zoom motor to set that up as well. But this is the basic setup that I actually prefer to use with this to use the TransMount and the wireless transmission system. I rarely use the follow focus motor, but I can totally see how that can make sense in certain applications, and that's why I'm continuing with the setup of that. Now to set up the follow focus or follow zoom motor, I'm again going to double press the button for the motors to disable so that I can lock them and then start working on setting up the follow focus or follow zoom system. Now, depending on your lens, you might actually have these ridges on there, which is usual for cinema kind of lenses. However, I don't, and these RF lenses don't have that. So I have to use one of these rings. And Zhiyun actually provides 2 of these, which is really cool because you can actually mount 2 of them permanently or semi-permanently and then continue using those in the case of you wanting to use it, for example, for the follow focus or follow zoom. Now, with RF lenses, the zoom doesn't really make any sense to run through a motor because you have the ability to use the electronic focusing assist, so you can do that with the control wheel or through the app as well. However, what you can do with this motor is you can actually motorize the zoom, and that's actually really cool and powerful. Now, first things first, I'm going to just put this around here. And right now I am at 35 millimeters and this way would be at 15 millimeters. So I know that if I mount the motor right here, I will be able to just mount this way. And let's put it like that. And then you kind of just push it into place and into the inner teeth right there. And now if I twist this, you can see that there is actually nothing that I'm going to come in contact with, but I might actually still want to push it a little further down here so that we are sure that we don't touch anything on the other side. So let's see, make this a little bit tight so that it's a good grip and fit. And of course, again, if you have cinema type lenses, you might already have these kinds of teeth, which is of course very helpful so that you don't have to mount this, but it makes it very compatible with also these newer types of RF glass and not the cinema type stuff. Now with this ring already mounted, now the next step is to mount the solution for the follow focus. So I'm just gonna push forward the camera a little bit so it's easier to work on. Right here at the bottom, there is a place where we can put this and it actually kind of feels nice and fits into place. And there we have this little screw, which is kind of solo and doesn't really stick anywhere, which is kind of annoying because it is hard to keep track of. But we can use that to basically screw this right here into place. And we can actually also adjust how close or far away it is supposed to go. So this actually moves in and out depending on how far you need it to go and what kind of a bigger lens you might have and such things. What I also find really helpful is that most of the screws on the gimbal actually have a mechanism so that you can pull this out and then twist it without actually twisting the screw. So you can actually maneuver the ends or the twisty things so that you don't have them in your way if you need to do that. So that's really helpful. The next step is that we have this little tube right here and we'll have to put this right through here. And then onto that tube comes the motor. And there again, we have it also the ability to extend this depending on what you want to do or what you might need. And here I can now put the motor onto the other end of this tube. And there you can see the tube goes right here. You might not be able to make this out because of the camera being in the way. Let's see if I can change that by opening that motor. So we have this tube right here. There are the ridges, and now I can push on the motor right there. Tighten this maybe a little bit. And I'm making use of the ability to push this out or pull this out. And as you can see, we are not close enough to the ridges. And there I can again also do the same thing. And now open one screw and push this back a little bit so that we can actually mount this right there. Pushing the teeth into the other teeth and closing the motors off so that they are nice and fit. So with that, the motor is mounted into position. The zoom is set in a way that it is going one way only, and we are not overdriving over the connection mechanism right here. And now the last step is to actually connect all of those things together. And for that, we have this cord right here, and this actually has a bit of an image of the motor. And I don't know why they made this with the brackets right there, because now if you put this in here, maybe we can do it the other way around and go above, but I don't like going above. So let's just put it in like so. Going to funnel this under here, over there, and then we have the mounting point right there. And if I open that motor, then we have there a mounting point for the motor. And here I can now put this in like so. And again, I have no idea why they went with a bracketed version, because now this goes up and somehow weirdly around, and it doesn't need to be that way, but for whatever reason they made it anyways. So let's just push this through again. I noticed that it might be better just to leave it like that and have it connect. So this is how you connect the motor to the whole system. And now let's rebalance this real quick so that we don't have the issue that is currently happening and it's moving all over. So we have one antenna that was in the way, so I had to adjust that. And now pushing back. Okay, good, this sounds good. Now I have currently here, I don't know if you can see that on the screen, there is a screw in the way of me pulling this and closing it off completely. So I'm gonna just pull the screw and go out of the way. And now I can push this a little further so that it's nice and tight, a good fit right there. Now the camera is too far on the left, so the weight needs to be pushed toward the motor a little bit. So opening that up and pushing it toward the motor. And this is as good as I can get it at the moment. So the heaviness on the left side is still a little bit there. And it might be easier or better for the setup to have the motor on the other side. But again, that always depends on your setup and of course your weight distribution. But now with all of this set up, we have the motor mounted right there, connected to the lens. We have the TransMount system right there. And maybe the only thing that's left to do is also to do a little bit of the counter stabilization here. We have that as well. So let's mount it as well. And we can put this under here on the Manfrotto plate. There's a little bit of a screw head or a screw hole. And we have this extra little screw, which can be helpful to hold the heavier lenses. Now, my problem right now is that this actually would also limit the movement of the zoom. So I'm not gonna pull this in all the way or push this in all the way. I would have to push the camera a little further back on the mounting plate, and I'm not gonna do that at the moment, but just know that this here is meant to go up like this, and that is actually to give you more stabilization for the lens, and that way giving you smoother footage, less jitters and stuff like that, especially on heavy lenses like, for example, the 1535 here that I have on there. Now, with all of this set up, the motor and the TransMount and everything, we can again flip open the screen and now start the whole motorization again. Now we have the motors active. It is working as intended. And now the next step is to actually set up the motors essentially. And that means that we need to calibrate how far these motors are supposed to go. And the easiest way to do that is simply to make it go into zoom in my case. So this is a zoom motor, and I'm going to tell it that with the little switch that is on there, which goes from focus to zoom. And then there's a button that's called Cal, and we can just press that and hold. It's now going to twist one way until it stops, and then the other way, and then it knows where are the two ends, and then it beeps for a quick second, and now this motor right here is calibrated to the zoom range of this lens. Now, of course, if you want to either limit the range of the movement, or you have a focusing system that you want to use on here which does not have an end, so for example you have a system that is focused by wire like these lenses right here, then you would have to set this up manually in the system with the touchpad on the monitor, because then you will have to manually set these settings onto the places that you would like to basically save as the start and the end, and then the motor knows how far it can go in either direction. So that's something that you can do as well, but for this kind of lens with a hard stop on the zoom, you can use the calibration, which is automatic and just tries out whether you go, how far can you go in this way and how far can you go in the other way. And now with all of that set up, we can go back into the menu by pushing away the image transmission. The third one from the bottom, the control wheel, is our menu point, and then all the way at the bottom, there's one setting that's called follow focus motor and one is called follow zoom motor. And I want to control that with my little wheel at the back here, and now back on the camera. And now if I twist this and I go to the top camera right here, now as I twist this, you can see the motor is doing its motion from start to finish and again all the way to the front. So this is how you set this up. This is how this works. This here, of course, is only a range from 15 to 35, but it can already get you a really interesting result, specifically for something like the vertigo effect. Now, again, this is a setup guide, not going to go into the depth of all of the other things. And basically, this is the full setup. This is how it looks when you handle it or hold it in your hand, and you can do things like the underslung mode still, unless you need something on top of the camera, of course, but you can do it and it works really nicely, and it's a great package, fully decked out for all the features that you might want on this. And of course, all of this is also remote controllable because you have the TransMount system and the app available, and you can do tons of stuff that way. Now this concludes my overview and setup guide of the Weebill 2 Pro package with all the bells and whistles. If you have any questions about all of this, you can of course leave those in the comment section down below. And of course also join the Discord server if you want to have a conversation about this type of gear or any of my other videos. If you found this video helpful, please share it with someone, give it a thumbs up or a super thanks. Those are always appreciated and help me make more videos like this happen. With all that said, have an amazing day, make your footage smoother with a gimbal, and I will see you in the next video. Ciao, ciao!